Support for Celebrity Memoir Book Club comes from the all-new Nissan Murano. Claire, what do you know about life?
Life is we're living right now?
Yeah, this life. Life, it's busy, it's loud, and it moves at hyper speed.
That is so true. And that's why I'm really grateful that the all-new Nissan Murano with relaxing massaging seats and a modern spacious interior gives you an unapologetic refuge from life's daily hustle and bustle.
Well, get me in there right now. Fling open the door and I'm hopping into the all-new Nissan Murano.
It's my favorite place to take a deep breath and exhale the day's pains away.
Because once you're inside an all-new Nissan Murano, there's nothing to do but just drive.
I'm Claire Parker.
And I'm Ashley Hamilton. And this is Celebrity Memoir Book Club, the podcast where we are a 3-man band, me, Claire, and a book. And if you say, well,
you can't do this band with only 2 of the members, I would say, then explain to me what Angels and Airwaves is. Explain to me what Plus 44 is. Explain to me what those 5 years of Blink-182 with that random other drummer was.
Yeah, and if you say, well, Travis Barker is the only one I want to hear from, well, then you can take the book and read it yourself. But if you say, nope, the band is what I want to hear from, well, then keep listening to this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, what I mean to say is if you don't want our analysis, don't keep listening.
Absolutely. And now you've been warned, and any problems you find is your own death doing.
Totally. Death doing is what's happening. Claire, what have we got coming up?
I believe we're still going on tour. I believe we're going to Ireland and England and coming right home to New York City.
For the grand finale, we are doing a Memoir Madness tournament where we are pitting our favorite memoirists against each other. We have had some crazy competition so far, and we are going to be taking our finalists to London and Dublin, and then finally back home to NYC for the final showdown.
And Ashley.
Yes?
Can I ask you something?
Of course.
Do you have any recommendations from last week or any stories to share?
Okay, I do have a recommendation, and I feel like you're going to make fun of me, but my recommendation is Sunshine. My real recommendation is reading like harder books.
Interesting.
I've been reading The Picture of Dorian Gray because you saw the play and you recommended it, and I want to go see the play, but I don't know the story. And I feel like since high school, I've read predominantly just like fun contemporary fiction, which I enjoy, and I'm not saying none of it has challenged me, but I do think there is something about the classics that are written in a way where it feels intimidating at first if you haven't read anything good in a really long time. And like, again, I haven't not read good books in a while, but it just reads very differently, and I feel a bit challenged by it because it's not the way we talk presently. So you had to put yourself through a little bit more, and the way that it like makes you have to think about what you're reading. Highly recommend it. I just feel like right now we're seeing such a rise of people being like, books, why would I read books when I can watch TikTok? There's a big fight online about romance novels versus fiction or like literature. And I do want to say, you gotta read books. Good ones. It's so important. I feel so good about it. Whenever I finish reading for the night, I go, good job. Tuck in, sleep well. You did good today. Claire, do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, my recommendation would be have your dad be an accountant. That's something I wasn't born with. And looking at Ashley's privilege every day, I'm like, if I could have gone back and changed anything about my life, I would have loved my dad to be an accountant because tax day just happened. And I have to tell you something. Every day, every year, it's a new fresh horror. And not only is that year a horror, but I'm like constantly being haunted by the ghost of horrors past. I just found out a mistake I made in 2022. It's just getting worse and worse. And I keep thinking next year, it'll all be lined up and easy and good to go. And every year, it just compiles and multiplies. And I'm under a bigger and bigger mountain of not just new mistakes that I haven't heard of yet, but the old mistakes that have like doubled and gotten worse with time. And I have to say, if I could recommend anything, it would be to have your dad be an accountant.
I don't know if it's doing anything for me. I don't know if what I'm doing is right.
Have you received any notes in the mail? Have you received notices to your email?
I think I move a lot more often than you do.
Let me tell you, I'm stressed. Mark Hoppus, let's hop on over to this puss.
Mark Hoppus is the bassist from the hit music sensation Blink-182. You might know them through Travis Barker or
being born in the 90s or born in the 80s. You might have known them from them being one of the number one bands in the world at a time.
Yeah, but you might not. You might know them through Travis Barker.
Yeah.
So Blink-182, hit band, great songs. three members, Tom DeLonge, Mark Hoppus, and Travis Barker. If you say, well, why haven't you covered Travis Barker's memoir? Baby, rewind 2021, I believe. Go hit that episode.
Well, maybe not. I think we were a little bit
green.
We were a little bit bedazzled by him.
That's so true.
We were like, it's cool that every girl fucks him. He's a rock star. I feel like I fell for Ashley's nonsense. And that she's like, shouldn't all rock stars get a pass?
I think Mark Hoppus is one of the first rock stars that I haven't fallen in love with.
Yeah, because he's just a nice guy who's had the same wife and like worked hard and loves the band and wants to show respect and wash his hands. And you're like, loser.
It's so boring.
Interesting fact about him. He grew up
in the hell on earth.
In Ridgecrest, California, a small town in the middle of the Mojave Desert. The only reason the town even exists is in this barren landscape is the large adjacent military base. 1 million acres of creosote and nothingness where the Navy develops and tests their missiles, rockets, and bombs. Is where my father has worked since I was born. So his dad is literally a rocket scientist who took his big brain and said, let's help blow up people more efficiently.
Thank God, because they were suffering before when it happened nice and slow.
Yeah. So lots of people getting bombed. Thank you, Mr. Hoppus.
He says his dad would be watching the news at night and there would be airstrikes on some nation. And his dad would be like, I built that. I did that. Anyway, so they lived in Death Valley, which
sounds
is
awful.
Groundbreakingly scorching temperatures at the summertime and freezing temperatures in the wintertime.
They said one time they left their house for the weekend, came back, and all their candles had melted.
I grew up a happy kid in a happy family. They lived in a double-wide trailer for a while. Then his dad bought them a house on the outskirts of town.
My mom let me take mental health days off from school while my dad shook his head. When I was 5, my sister Anne was born. 5 years is a fairly big gap between siblings, but there was never a distance between us. From day one, I felt close to Anne. She was my sister and my friend.
Where they grew up, it had an odd combination because of the base of geniuses, desert rats, doomsday conspiracists, and meth heads. I believe at one point, Ridgecrest was the methamphetamine capital of the United States. Where isn't?
Well, that's one thing I've learned from traveling around the U.S. touring is that the one piece of hometown pride that everybody has is they're like, it's the meth capital of the world here. Meth capital of the U.S. Cape Cod, North Carolina, New Jersey, Vancouver, California, San Diego, San Francisco. Like, how could they all be the capitals? One of you guys needs to stand down and
somebody has less meth than everybody else.
At least per capita. But Mark Hoppus, on the other hand, I got good grades, stayed out of trouble, and I was never late. My homework was always impeccable. Except for the time I got detention for changing the lyrics in the Christmas play to Jingle Bells, Batman Smells. Okay, hack.
He was 8 during all of this. I'm like, what do you mean your homework was impeccable? How hard is 8-year-old homework?
We're getting to it. So he had a very happy childhood. Everything was amazing. And then in 3rd grade, everything fell apart. I have to ask, if you were very, very happy and everything was great and your family was perfect, and then one day it all fell apart when you were 8, could it be just like as you grew up, you gained consciousness? I don't think your parents just out of nowhere started hating each other and got divorced.
Well, because he even says it started behind closed doors. For like a year, his parents were fighting and he could overhear them a little bit, but they tried to keep it away from the kids as much as possible and failed. And then his parents announced that they were separating for a trial.
And this really affected him. I stopped paying attention in school and completely lost the ability to focus.
I'm sorry. What is homework in 2nd grade?
Like in 1st grade, I was nailing showing up and leaving on time. Come on, man.
I'm pretty sure it's just like times tables.
Okay, if that.
Yeah.
If that. And if not, no problem. You'll get them next year. His parents do this trial separation. He's hoping they get back together. But then my parents started dating other people and that hope vanished. His dad immediately got a new girlfriend who was this sexy little redhead who it turned out was also his secretary, who it turned out also broke up the marriage. Not her, him, but like she was the impetus. The mom had to support them, had to go get a job on the base, and apparently had to work in some basement where her only view was like of the parking lot where they went and got lunch together every day, the dad and his new girlfriend. So that's pretty brutal.
Yeesh.
I can imagine getting a divorce in a town that small with like one center
lunch place. The saddest, loneliest kid the world has ever. I mean, he is like making fun of himself, but he's also still.
Yeah, starting at 3rd grade. Nobody had ever been through a divorce before. His little sister seems like a psycho. Anne was young and processed the stalemate between her parents with a blind fury. She threw the gnarliest temper tantrums any kid has ever thrown. That's pretty.
Her sister would throw herself out of a moving car because
all the time.
A lot. Luckily, I guess it was a small enough town that there just like weren't busy streets.
Before the divorce, Mark really was like the mediator. The parents wouldn't speak to each other. And since he was the older sibling, he would be the go-between. With that desire to please people comes the fear of letting them down. I am constantly worried about being the source of friction. I want everyone to get along. I never want to put my own needs forward in case they upset the precarious balance. This dynamic is what made me the person I am. It gave me the good parts of my personality as well as the darker parts. It gave me compassion and patience. It also gave me anxiety, hypervigilance, and the constant need for reassurance that everything is okay. Is everything okay? Really? I could probably end the book right here. Everything you need to know about me is in that last paragraph. You can still save yourself, put down the book and walk away. There's nothing more honest I can say. Well, we can't put it down because this is our livelihood, Mark Hoppus.
So his parents are in a Cold War. They won't speak to each other. They do child handoffs in public spaces where they like park on opposite sides of the parking lot and have the kids go back and forth. The mom ends up in a relationship with a real dillweed who abuses her. And then when she shows up at work the next day with bruises, her boss and coworkers are like, we're getting you the fuck out of there.
By the time absolute fucking asshole came home for lunch, the house was empty and we were gone. She had moved in with them at this point because the father had stopped paying for anything. And I don't know how he got away with that. But she was just like a formerly stay-at-home mother who was now single, supporting a whole family and struggling to make ends meet. I'd be pretty pissed at the dad.
Yeah. Then the mom meets Glenn. Another Glenn.
Ugh, love him in the wild.
The divorce is officially on. So this whole time that they've been living apart and dating other people was a trial separation. And then they were like, yeah, no, we're going to stay divorced. And I think the mom has been with Glenn ever since.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, happy.
So when they officially get divorced and start dating these other people, the parents let them down and say, okay, kids, you get to pick who do you go with? Which is, I think, maybe what today we would say is wrong. It's very Parent Trap.
It's very Parent Trap. And so Anne was like, well, I'll go with the mom. And Mark feels bad for the dad. So he goes, well, I'll go with dad because he doesn't want his dad to be alone. And he resents his dad for years because he felt that this choice wasn't really his choice.
I punished my dad for that choice for years. I blamed him for the divorce. I blamed him for my loneliness. I blamed him for everything. I don't know that that's wrong. He was a pretty bad father. And I do think it sounds like they got divorced because he left his wife for his secretary.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes people are to blame.
His dad moved him around a bit because he, worked for the military. So he was getting moved to Virginia to work out of the Pentagon. And then they moved back to California.
He was a complete latchkey kid. His dad was working. His dad was dating. He'd be out.
And his dad was fully traveling. Like he was in 7th grade and just like home for the weekend.
Yeah. And he was like, I don't know. I'd put myself to bed. It is what it was. I'd watch TV. I'd do my homework. I was very shy. He went through a few years where he was super, super shy and nervous at school. And then he kind of came out of that shell and became the class clown in 7th grade, which was a bigger problem.
First, he finds movies and he's obsessed with them. He loves quoting movies. He, gets in trouble in class for being a smartass because he's quoting movies. And then one day in his lunchroom, there's an issue of Thrasher magazine and he convinces his dad to get him a skateboard and all of his friends become skate hoodlums. I
suddenly found myself with a new group of skater friends who were hooked as well.
I hated competitive sports, any sport whose objective is overpowering someone else, pushing them down. Raising yourself above a defeated foe wasn't for me, but skateboarding is internal, more zen. It's about getting a little better every day.
A girl gives him the Cure cassette that she burned for him, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, and he's like obsessed. And then that ends up being his first concert. And when he leaves that concert, he has this moment of being like, holy shit, those guys wrote that song, put that song out there. I've been listening to it. Now here they are. Here I am. We're in the same room. Like it was this real moment of like, anybody can do this. You can do this. You got to go home and figure out how to become them.
Yeah, he goes to see They Might Be Giants and is transformed. He transcends. He can't believe what he just saw. And then he and his friends decide to start a band and it's called I Like Eggs, that's funny.
Well, it should be. It's taken from a Billy Crystal comedy album.
Oh.
But I mean, listen, good artists borrow, great artists steal.
So he convinces his dad to buy him a bass guitar. His dad buys him one and his dad's like, so should I get you lessons? And he's like, hell no. What am I, a poser? What am I, a square? So he teaches himself bass.
Instead, I sat in my room and taught myself slowly copying the songs I loved, trial and error along the fretboard until I found the right notes. Gradually, I taught myself the notes and then the rhythms. Week by week, month by month, I got a little better. I should have taken the lessons. Decades later, I still have terrible technique. I'm a solid bassist and proud of where it's taken me, but I'll never be one of those musicians who wears it up underneath their chin and runs scales all over the place.
Never too late for a lesson, Mark. Anyway, so he gets really into punk music. He loves The Descendants. He loves Social Distortion, Sonic Youth, all these cassettes. He's got a pile of cassettes and he's always listening to music and playing music, and his grades suck ass.
If my grades had been buckling before, they completely collapsed by senior year. Buddy, you haven't had a good grade since you were learning songs. Come on. You could be like, in second grade when I was 6.
I got an A+ in recorder. I fucking nailed show and tell.
He literally didn't even get an A+ in recorder. He didn't take music lessons.
That's so true.
They start going to all the concerts they can. He's got a bunch of like little hoodlum kids from the local problem school that he hangs out with. And, you know, they're just doing shit like lighting mattresses on fire and eating pizza.
He works at a pizza shop so he can pay for cigarettes. They start another band and he's just riffing, playing music with his buddies.
Living in the middle of nowhere. When I turned 20, my dad told me to get the fuck out of his house. He didn't say it like that, but he was like, you got to do something. And I agree. At 20, you can't just be like lighting mattresses on fire with your high school friends.
At one point, he's just like partying in the fields and he gets slipped acid. And there's like a chapter about that because he's a man. And that's kind of their thing. Have you ever been a man on acid? Well,
put it in your book.
You can read about it.
So he ends up deciding to apply to like a couple of colleges. He gets into one in San Diego. And just like that, he packs up his life, all he's ever known, and he moves to San Diego. The only people he lives there are
his mom and his sister and Glenn. So he's like, I don't know anyone in San Diego.
I'm just going to move in with my own mom.
And so he's talking to his sister. His sister has a boyfriend. And he's like, I don't even know how to find a new band here. And she's like, well, my boyfriend's friend plays music. So he goes with his sister to this friend's house. They go to hang out in the garage. And this guy goes, hey, I'm Tom. It's Tom DeLonge. They immediately are just bosom buds.
Tom DeLonge is 3 years younger, but he's like, we can't stop laughing. We right off the bat write a song together. I had been working on some like bass notes and he had been working on some guitar and we put it together and it just sounded like magic.
He also climbs up a pole and falls down and like cracks his heels. And he says, it was my first day in San Diego. I made a new friend, wrote a new song, and fucked up my heels. I loved Tom from the first day that I met him.
So this is August 1992. Claire Parker, not even born yet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you believe Tom DeLonge and Mark Hoppus came and went before you even became alive?
Well, I wouldn't say they came in wet. They came.
And now they went.
Yeah.
So he's living in San Diego. He's friends with Tom DeLonge. They're just skateboarding around, ripping shit up. They've got jobs so that they can smoke cigarettes and fuck around.
And subsist on a steady diet of candy and donuts and off-brand vending machine soda. We pantsed each other at the mall to try to embarrass each other.
That's very funny stuff. Overall, I'd say we were more shitheads than dicks, but I'm one of the shitheads in question, so my recollection may be biased. We were fearless, invincible, ascendant, immortal. Fuck you.
So Tom had a bunch of jobs. Mark had a job. They were middle-class hoodlums.
And then they were like, we need to make this a proper band. So they started looking for a drummer, and they found this like high schooler. He was 14.
I want this guy's memoir.
Dude.
I want to take a 6-year break from memoirs because, like, obviously I don't want to have to do his memoir for the podcast, but I am so curious about Scott Rayner, who was 14 years old, but really loved playing. Although he preferred metal, he liked drumming so much he was fine playing in a punk band if needed. He kept his drum kit in his bedroom and glued egg cartons to his walls to help dampen the noise. It didn't work, but his parents let us practice there anyway.
Even now, I struggle to adequately describe Scott. He seemed both content and lonely, like a kid who grew up with no attention paid to him, but also no unkindness pointed his way either. I don't know if Scott had ambitions or what they were. He just went with the flow. He rarely got angry or excited. Scott just cruised.
I'm desperate to know what was going on in Scott's life.
I mean, there is so much speculation about what Scott was thinking from a man who worked closely with him for like 5 years.
Could you imagine if we broke up and in 30 years I wrote a memoir and I was like, I have no idea what was going on with Ashley?
What was Ashley thinking about all the time? She was just kind of vibing.
She had a chill but anxious vibe. Wonder what that was about.
The way that Scott and him were in a band together and touring, like sleeping next to each other for years.
He was at his parents' house every day.
Scott lived with him for a moment.
You were at his parents' house and he was living with you, and you guys have no sense of why he was, how he was, or even how to describe him.
That's crazy.
Men are so weird.
We called ourselves Duct Tape and then Figure Eight. Finally, Tom suggested Blank. He just liked the word. It was short, easy to remember, and evoked quick motion.
As I said, when Tom sets his sights on something, he doesn't stop until he gets it. That's just how he is. So when he decided Blank was ready to play shows, I knew it wouldn't be long before he booked us some. So they start booking like local shitty shows, like opening in the basement venue. And they didn't know that it was their job to sell tickets. So they showed up to their first show ever and hadn't sold a single ticket and were shocked that nobody came.
Yeah, they were like, they gave us 50 tickets to try to sell. And we just came back with the 50 tickets in our hand. And then no one was at the venue. And it's like, well, yeah, you had all the tickets.
He's like, I was the only one allowed in because the other two guys were under 21. So they had to wait outside until our exact time to come on, at which point we played for nobody and then they left.
And then they had a show where they played for 2 people and they said, show after show, we picked up a new person every time and we played any show we could talk our way onto in front of anyone who would watch us for as long as they could stand. Our biggest dream was to one day play the big venue in town, Soma. So Soma was this venue that had a basement and then a big upstairs that was like kind of popping off in the punk scene. And then it had this dingy basement and they started getting booked at the basement. His mom is like weirdly supportive.
My mom came and even brought a friend. She came to a lot of the early shows. Most mothers might not know what to make of their son playing punk rock on a dilapidated basement. But like I said, my mom always supported me. Not just me, but the entire band. She signed a loan so that Tom could get a new guitar. And eventually, as Ashley said, their drummer moved in with Mark's family when his family moved because he was still in high school.
We were having so much fun, really, that I didn't care if anything more came of it. Playing our songs for people was a dream come true. But of course, Tom wanted more. He says this a couple of times.
Like, it's never enough for Tom. I'm like, well, you were in a dungeon. Young men don't start bands to play to one guy's mom. Unless it's Stacey's mom.
But also, I mean, we'll get to it
then
later.
She's the muse.
Later, it's always more. Like when the other guys don't want to tour anymore, Mark is like, but then what will I do?
Yeah.
It seems like you did love the more.
In May 1993, they recorded their first demo on a 4-track. They had gotten $1,000 from like a manager at their job at the warehouse where it was like a Sam Goody or something. This guy just really believed in them. I'm like, I hope he got his money back. Because Lord knows they took it and invested it and made tenfold. They made $10,000 ultimately.
Support for Celebrity Memoir Book Club comes from the all-new Nissan Murano. Claire, we're about to take a road trip.
I hope so.
And no, we are.
Yeah, hopefully.
Who's driving the car?
I would hope you, just because in the new Nissan Murano, the relaxing massaging seats are so comfortable that I like to just look out the window, feel myself doze off, and dream a better dream. What about you, Ashley?
I like driving because driver gets the aux cord, ultimately
Fair
speaking.
enough.
And I do feel that you're able to pull all rank on music and audio choices.
Uh-huh.
Who's talking? Who's quiet? Who's listening to music? Who's letting me listen to music? That's the driver's choice.
Yes.
And that's a choice I love to make.
With a Bose premium sound system for the passenger DJs and massaging leather-appointed seats for those who love to take the wheel, the all-new Nissan Murano is the perfect sanctuary to let the stresses of everyday life melt away and enjoy the ride. I can't wait to use the Bose sound system to listen to ourselves.
Me too.
Crystal clear.
Can I say, I don't know that I like our voice outside of a Bose premium sound system. This is so interesting. This is quite a scene to set. We called it Fly Swatter. I made the artwork for the insert, just a pastel drawing I did in a sketchbook. I cut out of magazines and books and I drew on top of them and I'd bring the materials to Kinko's and spend long nights sitting on the floor amongst the Xerox machines, meticulously putting it all together. Late nights at Kinko's are the absolute best. Cold fluorescent lights cast a pallor of sickness over the exhausted college students working the counter. It's always filthy. Torn pages and paper clips litter the corners of work areas. Glue and pens scatter the floor. A Post-it note on a copier just says Greg. I do feel like this late night at Kinko's, I'm like, these are the things the internet took from us.
We used to be collaging at Kinko's.
And now
we're on
we?
Photoshop using Canva like dogs.
Bring back glue. I want to sniff it. I want to use it. I want to smear it. So they cut 10 tracks in like one day with this $1,000 to bring to a recording studio.
They ended up calling it Buddha. Their big concern was that nobody was going to know if their name was Blink or if the name was Buddha, and which was the name of the CD.
Yeah. And so they printed a bunch of cassettes, and then him and his mom and sister sat in the kitchen compiling all of them. And then he would drive them around to like record stores to sell on consignment. They also start playing the main stage at Soma, and they're like, wow, I guess we're famous.
This established a dynamic early on that would remain for years to come. Tom dreamed big and I saw it through. He strove and I stabilized. He's the guy reaching for more and I'm the guy making sure the band can withstand the structural pressure from the leap to hyperspace. This is a huge generalization, of course.
Of course. So then Buddha starts selling some copies at these record stores.
Everybody thought they wouldn't. He's like, yeah, you can come back in a few weeks and take your copies back because they were being sold on consignment. But like they started selling out and they kept dropping off more. And to them, this was success. The idea that they would even have to replenish their 5 cassettes for sale, that was huge.
And then there's this guy in town named O who is like a guitarist, but also kind of just like a local cool guy with influence.
He goes to everything. He's photographing everybody. He's like involved with all the cool skater magazines. He's just a real scenester.
And he's got the ear of the guys at this record label called Cargo Records, which is like the big punk label in the area. And then there's this kid named Bram whose dad runs the label. And between O and Bram nagging this label about Blink-182, finally they're like, okay, we'll hear these guys. And they hear them and they're like, you know, we don't really do pop punk. We're more of just like a punk.
Grunge. They were coming out of the Nirvana.
Okay, they were
era.
A grunge label. So they start a little imprint called Grilled Cheese where they can sign a pop punk band, and they sign Blink-182 to their first record deal.
They end up getting sent to Los Angeles to cut their first album. They get lost on the way there. They show up. They do as much as they can in the studio, but of course it's still not enough time. So they go back to San Diego. They finish it up, and they call the album Cheshire Cat.
Nobody at Cargo ever checked on us or asked to hear what we recorded. In fact, years later, we learned that the owner actively bet against us. He bet his employees that Blink would never sell more than 1,000 copies. Then they get a cease and desist.
It turns out there's an Irish band called Blink, and they had already used it in California and New York. So they had to come up with a new name, and they just go Blink, and Mark goes 182. And he's like, what does it stand for? Nothing.
I mean, when I was a kid, what were the ones you heard?
I actually can't recall. I know that there were rumors, like blowjob adjacent rumors. Like,
I feel like people in my school would be like, that's just the amount of times you blink in a minute. And now when I think about it, I'm like, that's so much blinking. Of course, that's not true. But
maybe I heard that one too.
It didn't even occur to me until I was reading this book where he was like, here are some of the rumors about why our name is the way it is. And it doesn't even come up with the numbers of blinking one. But I was like, why didn't he say the numbers of blinking? And then I thought about it really quick and I was like, oh, well, that's just so much blinking. That would be impossible.
3 blinks a second. Our eyes are just functionally closed all day. We're doing stop motion animation in our real lives.
Someone claimed Al Pacino says fuck 182 times in Scarface. That's since been proven wrong. I mean, 182 blinks a second. That's a lot.
So Blink-182 is starting to pop off, right? Like, and by pop off, I mean very, very smallly, but they sell some records.
They're selling better than they thought they would ever sell.
And they're getting invited to go on tours. They're getting to do these cool like skateboard tours and bands. And it's clear that it's not going to work with college. Like they can't have a full-time job and be pursuing
can't believe
music.
he was in college.
Well,
I forgot about it.
I think he forgot. Like,
we all forgot.
His dad's like, you need to have a backup plan. And his mom's like, pursue your dreams. You could go to college at 40.
I mean, what a great mom.
They team up with this guy named Rick, who's a local hanger-outer.
And promoter.
Booker. And he becomes their manager. Rick had a lot of connections in the surf industry and pushed our music on his friends who made surf and skate videos like 411 VM, Transworld, and Taylor Steele. They were huge at the time, and so they really got to be a part of that scene.
Yeah, and so they start touring with Pennywise, 7 Seconds, and Sprung Monkey, and then they get invited on a big tour with Pennywise.
They get to go all the way to Australia, and this is a huge... They had been touring in like their little van, and it sucked, and it was kind of like they were getting paid $50 each concert, and whatever they needed for gas, the rest they got to spend on Taco Bell, and that's all they were eating, and it was horrible. And here they're like, whoa, they'll fly us over there, and we get a hotel room. This is incredible.
I loved every second of being on tour. Everywhere is home and nowhere is home, just like growing up, because he moved a lot when he was growing up. After our American tour, we hopped on a flight to the other side of the world. Rick had begged Pennywise to bring us along on their Australia run. You know, they're getting bullied on tour because that's what it's like to be an opener. They're all pranking each other and goofing, lots of goofing.
Just a lot of setting up your own merch. Don't I know it?
I mean, this is, truer words have never been spoken. To tour in a van, you've got to want it. Anyone with any semblance of home or normalcy or decorum or compassion for their fellow man has no place in a van tour. Everything we've learned about touring in a van seems like the worst thing.
How long do you think you and I would survive touring in a van? I think with the van thing, I'm so sleep dependent that like one bad night and I wake up the next day and we have a fight the likes of which we've never known where I say things that can't be unsaid.
It just wouldn't work.
You would suggest a different breakfast spot and I would get mad at you for like ordering something I don't want to eat. And you'd be like, well, get your own food. And I'd be like, but I don't like what you're ordering right now and I don't think I can keep looking at you. That's how I am on No Sleep.
I think what would happen is you'd say, where do you want to eat? And I'd say, I don't care. Where do you want to eat?
Oh,
and
I'm already mad. I'm already mad.
And then you'd blow the lid off the place.
I'm I'm already fucking pissed off.
And the options are McDonald's or Taco
Or you know
Bell.
what? And then I would go, McDonald's, and you'd go, sure. And I'd go, what do you mean, sure?
If you don't want that, I asked you what you wanted.
Oh, God.
YF.
If anybody wants us dead.
Put us in a van. Van tours involve a lot of arguing about whose turn it is to drive next. I mean, he walks you through what a day in the life on a van tour is like, and I was shaking by the end of the first paragraph.
So then they get to do Warped Tour. Ever heard of it?
The first Warped Tour, or the second Warped Tour.
I didn't know there ever was a first Warped Tour. I just thought with humanity came the tour.
In 1996,
and we were so fucking warped.
We've been warped since day one. In 1996, Rick talked Blink-182 onto another tour, a summer-long traveling cavalcade of punk rock and skateboarding called the Warped Tour, which had been launched the previous year.
They're playing with all these bands that they love. I mean, it was a very cool punk little shindig back in the day. In my head, I'd leveled up. I was finally sitting at the cool kids table. Just 2 years prior, I was paying money to see these guys play at Soma, and now here I was on their bus, touring alongside them. They were my peers. So when was this? I wonder what year this was.
1996.
So just think, he moved to San Diego August 92, and by 96, he's on Warped Tour.
That's crazy.
So they had a favorite band back in San Diego called Rocket from the Crypt, and the word on the street was that they had sold out and gone big. The cool thing in punk world was that you signed with an indie label. You never signed with a big label. It was the punk rock's forbidden fruit, akin to selling your soul to the devil. Signing to a major label was the absolute worst, most abhorrent thing a punk band to do.
3 pages later, he's like, so we had to.
Later that year, we signed to a major label. I mean, I will say it's written that way. Like the very next sentence is, later that year, we signed. Like he knows that it is written with a lot of self-awareness. He'd be like, things would never get better than this. The next day, we wanted to kill ourselves.
I feel like he prides himself on originating as a punk band. They never seemed to like want to kneecap themselves in any way. Like they really were like, well, we're going to be as big as humanly possible.
I almost feel like the success came to them so fast that they probably don't even know. Like if within 3 years you're doing Warped Tour, it's like, when would you sell out? You've been on track the whole time.
Yeah, well, that was the second year of Warped Tour when it was still like a punk.
Yeah, but I do you know what I mean? I feel
it
like
wasn't like Vans
like
Warped
there
Tour.
was such a consistent angle of success upwards that like the next step, the next step, the next step. There's never time to even think about staying still. All you ever know is upward mobility.
There was never like a fuck you to the concept of TRL. It was like, oh shit, we're on TRL. When they were like, oh, we have to make this music video so that you guys can blow up to the MTV crowd, they were like, yes.
Yeah, of course. We'd always been dismissed by the scene's gatekeepers as the joke band, the Smother Brothers of the punk act, sophomoric and forgettable. And here we were, suddenly the hot chick at the bar, all eyes on us. We took everything they had to offer, but always stopped short of the dotted line. So they are like being approached by all these major labels, and they're kind of letting them wine dine 69 and then going, maybe not.
And then they get an offer from Epitaph, which is still kind of indie.
They are like the biggest label of the cool bands.
Yes. So they're like, oh, we want to sign with them. But then the record label that they were at, Cargo, gets like an offer for a buyout from MCA. And Epitaph can't purchase them from under MCA. So they have to forego Epitaph and give MCA a shot.
Oh, no. I wish that would happen to us. I wish we would be like, oh, no, we've been bought by HBO.
I guess we'll have to forego Apple TV Plus and give HBO a shot. We weren't afraid of major labels. We saw the potential in them. Cargo had done a lot for us, but there were limits to their reach. They could get our albums into cool indie stores, but we wanted to be in malls and chain stores across America. We wanted to see Blink albums at Sam Goody and Tower Records. It seemed like a 1 in a million shot, but 1 in a million happens to me all the time. So then they play with a band called Jimmy Eat World, and they're blown away. Listen, who isn't? And they get very inspired by their sound. And then they're headed into the studio to make another record. And in the wake of the Jimmy Eat World inspiration, I feel like if you're going to call Jimmy Eat World Pet Sounds, and this is their Sgt. Pepper's, they make Damn It.
8 months after it was released, Dude Ranch passed the 500,000 mark and went gold. You'd think I remember being presented with our first gold record, but I don't. There's a photo of us somewhere holding one of those framed records, so it definitely happened, but I just don't remember it. The whole year was a blur. So they get to straight go on tour. They get to do another Warped Tour. They do a U.S. tour with Less Than Jake. They go to Europe. They are popping off. They're now like an honest-to-God successful band.
Scott is pissed.
Yeah.
Scott was constantly angry and irritable, and it put a strain on the band. We played a show at South by Southwest on my birthday, and he was in a bad mood from the start. He was having a hard night and playing mad. Performing at South by Southwest was an important rite of passage for a band. Radio programmers and executives frequented the crowds. So they're kind of pissed that Scott is being a drag.
He's not just being a drag. He's like drinking a lot and showing up fucked up in a way that makes them nervous. And then on top of that, like one of their big things is all the banter that Tom and Mark do in between songs. And Scott would just start playing and like cut them off mid banter and be like, "Song's on," and then just storm off. And they were like, "Buddy, it's really not a good look for you to be like bullying us on
stage." I think at this point, Scott must have been 18 or 19.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, what was going on with Scott?
I think a lot. Was going on with Scott.
He also had a girlfriend at home and he was like, "I just want to hang out with my fucking girlfriend." God, I wonder if he regrets that every day of his life.
I don't know. Can I say, I feel like one of the hard things about this is, so we're about to get to Travis Barker. I do think that
if Scott hadn't left, they never would have become Blink-182.
Yeah.
I agree. So Scott is being a little bitch or whatever, a little 18-year-old boy. Call it what you want.
I don't blame Scott entirely. It was a difficult situation to be put in.
And his girlfriend calls. He's like, "I have to go home to her. We're in a fight." So he leaves right before a show. They're on this tour, the Aquabats. I was like, I've heard that word before. The Aquabats are their friends. They're a ska band that go on before them. And they're like, "Hey, we need a drummer. Can we borrow your guy?" It's Travis Barker. They immediately play with him. They're like, "Whoa, when you play, we're like good."
Travis just had this X factor. He has a different feel, a different sense of what a song needs, and the ability to pull it off. And on top of that, it was nice to see someone having fun behind the drum kit. Also, a babe. First of all, with Travis, I think that there was a whole new energy.
Well, they said he was like speeding up their songs at it. Like he just made everything better.
Yeah, but I also feel like from a marketing perspective, one of the things that like popped off about Blank is that there was like the pop punk goofs like goofing around, and then they had the heartthrob. Like
I can say I did not know Mark or Tom's name growing up, but I knew who Travis Barker was.
I knew who all three were, but like I also feel like that happened with the other one from this era that really popped off, Fall Out Boy. They had, you know, what's his name?
Pete Wentz?
No, Patrick Stump on the mic. He was like the pop punk dork, and then you had the heartthrob. Like you have to have that somewhere in the band, and it's not the front man.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I think it was like very important to the equation of a band that was going to pop off at that time.
I also think he gave them like a musical gravitas.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at the other bands that they were even looking up to at this time, a lot of those bands had flatlined and have since become like legacy acts. And I think they would have done the same. Like the way
I agree 100%.
Moved to that next echelon. So Scott, if you're listening, don't beat yourself up.
You could not have brought them to the heights they ultimately reached.
Yeah.
If you had stayed, you guys would have fumbled. Anyway, so they call Scott. They kind of would rather work with Travis at this point, but they call Scott. They owe it to him. He started the band with them. And he's like, "Listen, we're worried about you. It's not good. If you want to play with us, you have to stop drinking or get out." And the guy's like, "Fuck you. I don't want to play." And then a few days later, he's like, "Well, give me time to think about it." And they're like, "Too late. Gotcha.
Yeah.
You're out." They spoke one more time. He says that a year later, Scott called him and like yelled at him, and then he never heard from them again.
Poor Scott.
He talks about being an American Pie. He's in it for like a split second, but he gets a quotable line where he's like, "Hey, Trig kid," or something.
Hey, Trig boy.
And he's like, "It's still being quoted to me to this day. People don't even know who I am anymore."
He does just have the perfect level of fame, and he almost loves it.
Yeah. He's like, Travis was similar to Scott in the sense that he did not want to be the front man of the band. He was kind of quiet and reserved and was just came alive on the stage, which worked for Tom and Mark because they were the goofballs. They were like very competitive in their prankdom.
Mm-hmm.
They loved to like ham it up and do their bits. And Travis just smirked in the corner. Look how young he looked back then. I can't believe he was ever young.
Baby. He's so hardly tattooed. Then they find this producer named Jerry Finn, and they love him. Jerry made us better in every single way. He had mixed Dookie from Green Day. He did Jawbreaker albums. He criticized us constantly. He had the quickest wit and could utter a few simple words that cut you to your core.
So they end up cutting with him Enema of the State, which has the hit singles What's My Age Again, All the Small Things, and Adam's Song, which is, I like can't even think of how it goes, but it's about
oh my God,
divorce.
really?
Yeah,
no, it's about suicide.
Oh yeah, the next one's about divorce.
I never thought I'd die alone. He laughed the loudest. Who'd have known? Oh my God, everyone was like fucking emo to that song. We were all like, we're about to kill ourselves. The apple juice in the hall.
I was listening to Bright Eyes. It was a bit moodier. I didn't go to my Blink at 182 for my moodiness.
Anyway, so they're goofing. They're making fun music videos, and now they have big label budget to do them. So they have this one music video for What's My Age Again where they're running around in the nudie patude. for all the small things they make fun of.
He thinks it's going to bomb. He's like, nobody wants to watch us make fun of pop stars.
Well, he just doesn't even know the music videos they're making fun of. He keeps on bringing up that he is like unaware of the mainstream. And I'm like, you are the mainstream, buddy. But
yeah, if you have the number one MTV TRL movie, guess what, buddy? You're the mainstream. We're bullying you now.
But they do this music video where they're like making fun of boy bands and like mainstream pop. And because it's on TRL where all that stuff is airing, it pops the fuck off. It becomes
I'm not
the number
familiar
one
with that video.
Me either.
I didn't have cable growing up, so there's a lot of this that I missed.
The only times I got to watch music videos were when my parents went to synagogue and I watched the V-Spot Top 20 Countdown on VH1. But then they would come home and I would have to turn it off at like number 4. So I never knew what was at the top, except for when Not Ready to Make Nice was on. Maybe I was like allowed to watch TV by then. I don't know. They're like being celebrated internationally, and then they go to a music festival where they're booed off stage. It turns out because of this music video where they were making fun of boy bands, this international crowd thinks that they are a boy band because this is the video they've seen. And so they boo them off stage. They go, this is the punk show. We don't want this boy band bullshit. Anyway, so they put out this first record with like the new era Blink-182 on a major label.
Fucking hit.
I didn't overthink or second guess anything. I just got the fuck out of the way. Sometimes I look back and I miss that freedom and innocence. I wish I could get out of my own way more when I sit down to write songs. I wish I didn't have to think about everything that happened next.
So meanwhile, their rep at the label is this really cool girl named Sky Everly, which is a crazy name. That's the name you give your daughter when you go, I bet you're going to marry a rock star.
Yeah, you're going to work in a major label and marry a rock star.
Sky Everly. In the 90s, who had the foresight to name a daughter that? She was born in the 70s. Okay, anyway.
Incredible
I guess that
work.
is very 70s California.
Yeah.
Anyway, he had a huge crush on her, and she would not give him the time of day because she was a professional. She didn't mingle with the artists. He finally like starts calling her at night, and they start chatting, but on music video sets, she won't give him the time of the day.
So he goes on a date with Melissa Joan Hart, former memoirist, update alert.
And he's like, it sucked. All she talked about was acting. She had no interest. She does sound like a drip.
Yeah, of course.
He's like, well, what kind of food do you like? And she goes, whatever they serve me at catering. And he goes, okay, well, what do you like to read? And she goes, scripts. He's like, she probably thought I was boring too because all I care about is music. I was like, no, you also skateboard.
Also, I'm sorry. She wasn't talking about TV she liked. She was talking about
like the show she worked on.
Scripts.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know.
She sounds awful. And that's why she had to marry such a loser musician.
Yeah. Oh my God. From like Puddle of Dumps or something.
Imagine that was your band name, Puddle of Dump.
I was going to say Puddle of Mud, and I was like, well, no, that's a real band. He wasn't in that. He was.
Puddle of Dumps is so funny because it's so true. That happens in New York. It's scary. It's an epidemic. Oh my God. Puddle of Dumps, take it. That's yours, you guys. If anyone has a band they're starting, that's a really funny band name.
Anyway, so he still has such a crush. He ends up getting her number, and they're going to this like party, but it's like an industry thing, and they're the first ones there, I guess. And they sit at the bar, and a man starts talking to them, and they pretend to be a married couple with a baby. And she ends up giving him a chance, and boy, oh boy, have they been together ever since.
And had a baby.
And they got
She's
married.
like, oh, we're married with one son. And right now, to this day, married one son.
He thinks she's so cool and so beautiful. And he like brings her to music industry events. And he's like, you know, I'm a famous rock star. I'll bring you to this gala. And she's like, I know everyone at the gala. That's my friend Jay-Z.
But she's like, God, she's so cool and professional. They do TRL. It goes great. He's like, that started a very synergetic relationship with TRL. They love our goofiness and we love their publicity. All the Small Things was nominated for a VMA. That's a really big deal.
It wins. We got up there and I planted my elbows on the podium to claim the entire space.
He really does look like a frat bro dressed up as a punk for Halloween.
Yeah.
There is something so deeply uncool about his bone structure.
Just like the way he stands and the way he's looking at stuff, looking not at the camera is, I don't know,
There's like
man.
something so Halloween. Like, I mean, he's not even wearing anything particularly ridiculous. I'm looking at him in a t-shirt, backwards hat, and belted pants. But there's something where I'm like, oh, your girlfriend put this outfit on you and you like it more than you want to admit.
Yeah. He wasn't drinking heavily at the time. He's like, you know, we were doing all this stuff, winning these awards, going to these parties, but, you know, I was just going home with my girlfriend.
At this point, they had like bought a house in San Diego, and he's like, it was a pretty modest house.
Yeah.
When we toured Dude Ranch, we comfortably headlined large clubs and theaters. Most had their own lighting rigs and house engineers, but with the success of Enema of the State, we could now fill amphitheaters and arenas. This required a larger operation, semi-trucks filled with lights, sound equipment, props, dressing room cases, and even sometimes our own stage.
Blink was growing so fast it hardly seemed real. It took Dude Ranch 8 months to sell 500,000 copies. In Enema's first 8 months, it sold 5 million. Can I admit something? I like being famous. I know I'm not A-list famous, but I get recognized in public. I like knowing I'm part of something people love. Blink-182 is a big party and everyone's invited. Some celebrities put on a persona, but I don't know any other way to be but myself. The thing is, duh. Of course he loves being famous because he has a perfect level of fame that he sometimes appreciates.
Mm-hmm.
He has a band, he tours, he makes assloads of money on these very popular songs. But I think that he only loses anonymity to people who like love and appreciate him and then like two weirdos.
Yeah. He's like, we got a lot of shit from the real punk scene saying that we were sellouts and like lame, but I don't think they really care, to be honest.
I mean, they live a perfect life.
Anyway, we were in Charlie's Angels. He's like, I thought it was fun that parents brought their kids to our concerts. And that is the mentality you have to be that successful.
Yeah, you just have to be like, whoever wants to be here is welcome here.
That's why Charlie can't be Taylor.
Yeah.
You have to be able to write happy. You know what I mean? You have to be like, sure, I'll score the Trolls movie.
And you don't have to want that.
No.
From day one, I've taken a cautious approach with money because you never know what's around the corner. He says him and Tom are like mostly chill with it. Travis is the true rock star in our band. The way kids dream of living if they ever won the lottery, that's how he lived. And let me tell you what.
He was right. It took money to live next to Kourtney Kardashian, who makes money.
Exactly.
But I also think Travis just knew that he was the best one and he'd be able to expand. Like there feels something about Blink-182 that they know, or at least they don't have enough faith in themselves to be like, we could ever do anything but this. So if this ends, we're screwed. Whereas I think Travis is like, I have a talent that will transcend.
And boy, did it. And the thing that I feel is unspoken in this book is that when it was Mark and Tom as like a united anchor, it was balanced because Travis brings skill and showmanship, and then they bring like the band.
182.
But I think there is this like thing where you're like, oh, all of these pieces are balanced in a way that's quite equal almost. And then when Tom and Mark are not united, like it makes no fucking sense. Like you're like, why would these three even know each other?
Mm-hmm. Whenever he talks about knowing Travis Barker, I'm like, how do you know him?
I know. When he's like, yeah, we were hanging out and still making music together. Travis was still down to work together. And I'm like, yeah, that's because Travis is down to work a 23-hour day.
I know. Even now when they're like doing Coachella together, I'm like, how did you get Travis? Like how did Travis hear about you? I'm like, I can't believe Travis works with you still.
Yeah.
That's so generous of him. He has a chapter about his dad finally realizing how famous he is. And he's like, it helped when his coworkers' kids were asking for autographs, but it really didn't hit for him until I did The Tonight Show. And
Richard Simmons was like, I love you guys.
It's interesting. He never really has any problems with the way he was raised or his parents. Like, obviously it caused anxiety, but it doesn't come up again for the rest of the book.
Yeah.
Even though he seems like a deeply anxious, potentially OCD person.
I mean, I think he definitely does have like severe OCD, right?
Yeah. It's like one of those weird books where it's like divorce was tough and then the rest of it worked out. Anyway, I've been miserable the whole time. Anyway, like, you know what I mean? You're just like.
Yeah. I guess the thing is he has like the perfect level of fame and his exact dream life and he's still not happy. And that's because nothing will solve anything unless you kind of figure out your problem.
So they want to write another album and they've decided they don't want to be like the pop punk princesses anymore. They're going to wear all black and be moody as hell and start saying no to things. And they're getting a lot tougher and edgier. And so they write this new album and Rick, their manager, who's known them since the beginning, is like, we're your fun, I'm drinking beer with my friends in a car in the summer songs. And like, we're edgy, we're emo. And he goes, no, people want the big hits.
And so he goes, you want a big hit? Fine. I fell in love with the girl at the rock show. She said what? And I told her that I didn't know.
And he's like, you got a second one? And they go, what about First Date? This night's almost over. Honest, let's make this night last forever. And then he's like, you know what? Looking back, those were two gigantic hits and they did propel all album sales. I guess he was right.
It's so funny. They're like, okay, fine. Let me give you some of these songs.
Oh, you want major summer hits? Fine.
Here they are.
It took them 12 hours to write it. So they came back the next day. They're like, I made this.
Here they are. It's done.
Some of the greatest karaoke hits of all time.
Call the radio. Tell them we've finished.
Should we go to a Blink-182 night at a karaoke station in honor of this podcast?
Yes, at a karaoke station.
Like, yeah. Sorry, I've been watching a lot of ultra marathons on TikTok. And so to me, everything good for you is at a station. 6 miles away. You get fuel, you get a nap, and you get to do a little bit of karaoke, and then you got 72 more miles. So the other big hit from that song, here's how it's pitched. She goes, we wanted another Adam song. We did one about how hard it is to be from a divorced family. They wanted a big music video. They wanted a house being demolished because, you know how divorce takes down a home.
Yeah.
Do you get the symbolism, or are you guys dumb as fuck?
So they are doing this music video where there's a wrecking ball wrecking a house while they play inside of it, and there's dust and debris falling all over the place. And on the second day of the music video shoot, they go to shoot the second half of it, and
it's 9/11.
And debris is a fallen, let me tell you.
It's 9/11, and they're not going to like the fact that we're doing this at all.
Yeah.
And somebody's like, no, it's fine. They've already spent so much money on it. People are going to forget this happened. This is going to be like a notch in the belt of America. And then sure enough, 9/11.
It actually turned out to be a huge deal, American speaking wise.
And so their label was like, you can't fucking put this out here. So they reshoot it to make it look like teens are taking the house apart. Jimmy Eat World had to take the title off their new album, Bleed American. A lot of people had to change a lot of things to be patriotic. And he was like, what could we do to help the country? And so then they do a tour, they tour Afghanistan and Iraq. This is interesting, though, to me. He goes, if you want a #1 record, you've got to play the game. It's not enough to sell the most records. The way album sales are measured, you have to spread them out. Some sales are weighted more than others. Most important was keeping the big chain stores happy, but you also have to pay service to mom and pop. It's a whole system. And he's like, and we played it. You know what I mean? We'd go in the mornings, we would do the DJs, then we would go to the late night, and then we'd sign everything, we'd shake hands.
They had their first stalker. It sucked, especially because they have wives at this point. She was like following them around.
So she had been caught stalking Mark at his house, and then she showed up to a CD signing, and only Travis was like, no, you can't get your CD signed if you're going to stalk us. And the other guys were like, thanks for saying that, Trevi.
I mean, there were a couple times where I was like, yeah, this is why Travis is the star.
Only Travis is ever like, hey, man, you got to show respect to us. And they're like, what?
He's the rock star. So they both signed the CD and just like didn't make eye contact with her. And Travis was like, no, you ruined this. Like, we would have signed your CD. We would have taken a picture with you, but you creeped us out and now you can't have anything. And then there was another situation where a guy from, I think, NoFX was shit talking them, but then coming to hang out backstage at their shows because they were playing like big, awesome shows. And Travis walked up to him and was like, hey, man, be cool with us or don't be. But I know you call us a sellout and then you come and drink the free drinks in our green room. Like, do you want to hang out or not? I'm sorry. I was right to fall in love with him.
That was the first time it dawned on me that being famous might not be as awesome as I thought it was.
It's still as awesome as he thinks it is.
So now they get to do this giant, cool concert tour. Huge. They were going to have the most pyrotechnics of any band of all time. A huge crew. But he starts to get very anxious at like how much is writing on these shows. He's like, every single show costs millions of dollars. People's salaries depend on it. If I get sick and cancel a show, like a lot of people are put out. So I started washing and sanitizing my hands more often, a lot more often. When I touched something that I deemed unclean, I wouldn't touch anything else until I scrubbed my hands. I definitely couldn't eat before I'd been sanitized. He starts to develop kind of like obsessive tendencies. And then he starts talking about the friendly competition between me and Tom had always been what made Blink-182 so special. It's like what pushed them to the extremes. It's what pushed them to prank each other harder, pants each other harder, make more lyrics,
better songs.
But Mark has this feeling that it's getting like a little bit out of control off stage. He says, Tom, who'd always been outgoing and boisterous, became increasingly private and secretive. Like, I got Sky an engagement ring, he got Jen a bigger one. I bought a house, he bought a bigger one.
Our chemistry felt amiss, tainted. I hated it. I wondered if Tom was still my friend, if he even still liked me. So then Tom starts talking about wanting to do a little side project.
But not directly to Mark. Mark is hearing it from other people.
And then for his side project, he asks Travis to do the drums, and he asks their manager to manage it, and he asks their producer to produce it. And he's like, Mark is sitting there being like, okay, so the only thing that's different in your side project versus your main project is that I'm here.
So that band is called Boxcar Racer. The message was clear. Tom thought I held him back from greatness. I didn't feel like we were best friends trying to conquer the world together anymore.
I will say the message was unclear because at no point does it seem like they ever really talked.
If I started another podcast where I did the same thing, wouldn't you be like, I guess you just didn't like working with me?
Of course. I think that every time you even have a conversation with someone else. But when he's sitting there saying, I wondered if he was even my friend anymore. I was like, this seems like it took place over the course of like 7 months where he's sitting there being like, well, we used to be best friends and now we don't talk and now you're in a new band. And
yeah,
now,
they do seem very separate, even though they like fully work together. It's very bizarre.
Yeah. And I understand, obviously, ultimately the message was clear,
Mm-hmm.
but there was a lot of lead up where two people who seemed to talk every day seemed to not be
having real communication. And ain't that the way? We're more connected than ever, but we're all lonelier than ever. So they end up going on this giant tour called the Pop Disaster Tour with Green Day and Blink-182. And even though it's a co-headliner tour, Blink-182 is the second band. And basically Mark's like, here's the deal. You can't co-headline because there has
Someone
to be a
goes
crescendo.
last.
And he's like, whoever gets to go last pulls out all the stops. Like, you can't pull out all the stops and then have some random second band go on. And he's like, Green Day, who had been bigger than us but had been stagnant for a while, clearly was butthurt about it.
So Green Day was being a little bit difficult on this tour. They were going on late. It made Blink-182 had to cut their set short because they were the real headliners.
They also got like a monopoly of the pyro. And then Green Day on the way to their first show was like, we're going to do pyro too. And Mark was like, but that was our thing.
We're the pyro guys. But then Green Day, who has their feelings hurt about being superseded by Blink-182, left that tour and went on to write American Idiot. And so Mark is like, yeah, because we inspired them to be better.
But he also does recognize that Blink-182 was doing exactly what had gotten Green Day into this mess of like Blink-182 was showing up drunk, doing fine, not pushing themselves. Meanwhile, Green Day, who I think was a bit more veteran, he's like, they were working out, they were eating healthy, they were showing up, putting on a show, they were choreographing stuff. And he was like, they had it down to a science. And then they went out and made their biggest record of all time.
So then he has a baby.
He gets very stressed out because somebody says, be gentle with the baby. And he internalizes it to mean he's too rough and awful with the baby.
I thought I understood how deep the well of my anxiety was, but parenthood was about to show me that it was far deeper than I ever could have possibly imagined.
So now it's time to put out their like big, I guess it's technically their fourth album, but it's like their third album in the string of hits, right?
Yeah.
So they're like, historically at this point in somebody's career, they use all the money, they do things crazy, they try to go above and beyond, they overthink it, they take too long, they rack up a bill and they produce crap. And he goes, that's not going to happen to us. We're going to get in, get out, and bing, bang, bong.
So what they do is they overproduce and spend way too much money, but they do make an album that's like kind of good.
Yeah, they ran out of a house. They ran out of a house for 3 months. Their producer, Jerry, he's like, I don't believe in all this like Pro Tools stuff. I'm going to still record on tape. And every time we want a sound, we're going to bring in the authentic instrument and we're not going to take any shortcuts. And he's like, nobody would have known the difference.
So they rent out a mansion and turn it into a recording studio. So they have like the living room is the drum room and it's like echoing. I don't know.
Just everything to be built from scratch. And of course, at the end of 3 months, they still are not done. Everybody's like, you're spending way too much money. They're all being pieces of shit. At one point, they accidentally leave a voicemail for like their record label saying like, well, who even fucking cares about them? They're going to be gone anyway. And then at that meeting, Travis shows up an hour late, no shirt.
Because he just got a chest tattoo, Claire. There was a reason for it.
Surely they could have put one of those pizza tables on his chest to keep the shirt from messing up the cheese. At one of those fancy parlors.
I don't know what kind of world you're living in, but where I come from,
a pizza parlor.
Where I come from, people fight for those pizza tables because they're few and far between. It's hard to get your hands on one, and he was but a rock star.
Anyway, turns out they were right. They got bought out anyway. Geffen Records. I hate the music world, man. If there's any business that sounds like the worst business, it really is show business, specifically music. But the point is, they put out Untitled, self-titled, or Blink-182. They all called it something different. So that's how you know things were going really cohesively. That being said, for the first time, it sounds like Travis was like, hey guys, I would like this band to be good. He's like, why don't we come up with a logo? Why don't we write better music? He, of course, does that thing he does to all of his first dates where he has them watch A Nightmare Before Christmas. And what's that other movie? Of True Romance. And then he's like, what if we named our kid Alabama? And what if that was our movie? And you're like, the movie you share with any girl you're fucking at the moment.
I'll tell you what, if you think that you and Travis have bonded over Nightmare Before Christmas, welcome to the world.
We all have. We've all had that moment. But anyway, he comes out with I Miss You, absolute hit, Feeling This, absolute hit. And sure enough, they do come out with a new sound, a new record. And it's not as big as Enema of the State or Take Off Your Pants on Jacket, but
it does numbers. While we were making this album, so the United States invades Iraq, so they go over there and play some tunes for the boys.
It changes their lives and perspectives on everything.
In a way that it seems to not. He also gives them a really good idea for how to catch Osama bin Laden, and he believes that he caught Osama bin Laden.
It was a good idea.
It was a really good idea.
Because he's like, my dad was a missile builder, so it's in my blood to build missile.
That's so true.
Missile in my blood.
Anyway, he gave them a really good idea. And 4 months later, guess who's caught?
Should we tell them what the idea is?
Yeah, if any of you guys are trying to catch a guy.
Anybody who is hidden in the hills but sending out video missives. He said, why don't we send drones over Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever he was hiding?
Yeah.
And have them omit a frequency that's above human hearing but could be caught on video recorder so that then when he sends out his next video, you can listen for that high frequency sound that they're not going to know is there and then figure out, like, triangulate which drones is in the background. I will say that's a lot of droning.
I think they were doing a lot of droning anyway. You might as well put some noise boxes on those drones. They're already out there flying.
Mr. Softy style. Anyway, then he has a whole chapter about how crazy Tom is. If Tom sees someone famous, he will approach them and be like, will you direct a video for us, M. Night Shyamalan? Will you be in a video for us, Mel Gibson?
M. Night Shyamalan almost did it, but he wanted $7 million. And they were like, that's too much.
They get to meet Robert Smith from The Cure, and he comes and plays with them on Wembley Stadium. And he's like, how amazing is that? And at the end, they all hang out and drink. And then Robert tries to kiss him on the mouth. And he's like, did that just happen? That's crazy.
He's so on rock and roll. He won't even make out with Robert Smith.
Things are going good, but one afternoon before soundcheck, Tom and I are in our dressing room and his phone rings and it's his wife, Jen. They both had toddlers at home at this point and they were on a European tour and he's like, you don't understand, touring in Europe is the fucking worst in the winter. It's so dreary. You're so far from home. I get it, but he's like, Jen is yelling at Tom about not being there to help raise their child. And he's like, it sounds like you got a bitch fucking wife. I can only imagine those arguments were fueling a lot of Tom's guilt and misery.
I do think that he probably was feeling guilty and miserable. And then I think being told you're right to feel guilty and miserable makes it worse. So Tom is saying after this tour, we need a year off. Like, we can't keep doing this. I can't go on like this. And Mark is like, what the fuck do you mean a year off? We're on top of our game. Things have never been better. How could we possibly take a year?
I am like, at this point, you're staying on 3 hit records. I think you could take a year.
You could definitely take
like, there's
a year.
he's like, we'll never be able to build on this momentum ever again. I'm like, yes, like, that's just not true. And I don't understand how you could have been in the game for this long at this point. They've now been doing music together for over 12 years.
Yeah.
How long could a year sound?
Yeah. The problem is, in Mark's defense, I'll say Tom was being erratic. And I do think if he had agreed to a year, it would have spiraled into something else.
But I also just keep thinking about like the Spice Girls and how in all of their memoirs, they're like, I had no idea how bad it was for everybody else. And I am just like, I do think on Mark's behalf, he could have seen that Tom was going through some shit and been like, let's do 6 months and reconvene. Like, clearly, and I don't think it's ridiculous after 12 years of constant touring to take 6 months and go be with your kid and your wife. And I don't know why he couldn't give that to Tom when clearly Tom is like not doing well. And I get that if you're the recipient of that not doing well, it sucks. But like sometimes you can be the bigger person and have some compassion and go, they're not handling this.
I mean, of course, they should have taken some time. It made no sense for them to say like, no, 1 minute off will tank everything. And I do think the problem is Mark has had a very charmed experience where he, you know, was a little bit aimless from ages like 18 to 22. And then he was in
the biggest band in America.
A huge band. And he moved from his dad's house to his mom's house to, I think, being able to buy his own house. Mm-hmm. And then he got a wife who worked in the music industry and seems insanely understanding of what his schedule requires and like what it's like to be a touring musician. And she just like takes care of shit. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the fact that everything has just kind of been the best version of what was possible for him, he like does not realize that even though stuff does suck sometimes, like he has gotten the best end of the stick at every turn.
Yeah, and clearly he's capable of handling it. I mean, at one point, Tom's like, I need time off. And Mark goes, yeah, time off to write the next album. So then we can tour again in a year when the album comes out. Like, that is not understanding.
Yeah.
You can't go on like that forever. So then they all go home and they're going to take a little break. And then the tsunami hits Indonesia and Lincoln Park organizes a benefit. And he's like, we got to be in this benefit. We got to be in this benefit. Like, how is Tom going to say no to this benefit when people died?
How could we not cure the tsunami?
They enter and then they go back to rehearsals. Immediately, they're all fighting again. And one day, Mark gets a call from his manager being like, Tom wants out. He quit. I still wasn't getting it. Oh my God, for real? Is he really acting like this right now? Ugh, okay, let me call him and I'll get right back to you. Don't bother. He changed his number. He doesn't want to talk to you. He doesn't want to talk to Travis. Tom is out. I think Tom might be a crazy person.
Me too.
I do think Tom was probably struggling with like addiction and mental illness, but I really think that Mark, as not a crazy person, is in the wrong for not recognizing that somebody needed help. It is actually so fucked up for somebody to like beg for time off and then be like, fine, but actually now never mind.
Yeah. And okay, so then I want to read this next part. So that was it. Tom was out and Blink was done. I know how divorce feels. and the band breaking up feels like divorce. Bitter and acrimonious, hostile and cold. Communication between Tom and me stopped. Everything had to go through management and lawyers. My best friend of more than a decade and I had to have my people call his people. I was paying a lawyer top dollar to communicate with a kid I used to break into abandoned buildings with to skateboard. Here's the thing, and I do feel for him. I do think that this would be hugely sucky. I mean, this is his livelihood. Of course, I think they've made enough money to live off of forever at this point. But it also, he loves it seems. Like, he does not seem to have the need to take a break. He was happy to just keep recording and touring and recording and touring until he died. And so I do think that's hard and sucks. Like, essentially, he's been fired, even though Tom's the one who quit. Like, he has been effectively fired from his job. I think that sucks. But I think to say, like, my best friend of more than a decade weren't talking anymore, like, you haven't been talking, it seems, for like 5 years, if ever. You made dick jokes together for a while, and then it seems that when he started spiraling, you have no fucking idea. He's begging for a year off, and you're saying, I don't know.
You were saying off mic that Mark seems like such a narcissist, and now that, like, I see 100% what you're saying. Like, between, who was that first guy? Seth Simon? Who was the first drummer? Scott. The way that he was like, I have no idea what was going on with Scott ever, and I cut him out because he wasn't useful to us anymore, and I never heard from him again. And now he's like, I don't know. It seems like Tom was really going through it. I don't know if Tom felt that the only way to get out of this band was to change his number so you couldn't contact him. That means you're a really bad listener.
Tom, in order to like get a reprieve, started a whole same band minus you.
Yeah. It's just such a symbol of his own insecurity that, okay, if you want to make music that bad, nobody's stopping you from making music, buddy. He goes on later eventually to finally start a band with Travis. Like, Boxcar Racer his ass right back. But the problem is he's so insecure and codependent with Tom that he doesn't believe he has any value without Tom. So, like, Tom can go off and do his own thing. You can't be that dependent on somebody else. You can't be a 35-year-old multimillionaire, super famous musician and be like, but without you, I'm nothing. If you want to keep making music, buddy. Nobody's stopping you.
And also, this is what I'll say about the fame aspect of it. I think at this point he had a lot of fame and money and resources. And I think that a lot of people with that will take it and start producing other bands. They'll like sign and work with they'll do like an imprint on a label.
Done.
I mean, he's obviously no Travis, but I also like think about like Rick Ocasek. He like became a producer. There are a lot of like other things that you can keep doing if you don't want to keep on being the guy in the band.
I mean, do what Dave Grohl did with the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
Just be like, and go hire a guitarist and a drummer and like write all the music and play the music you want to make. Do your solo project.
And that's the thing is like, because he is no Dave Grohl. And so he could have done like one of these other jobs and he didn't want to because he likes being famous.
He doesn't want anything less than amphitheaters.
Yeah. There were other things he could do. He is much more like addicted to the fame than he was willing to admit.
So he goes home. He does his best at home. He becomes a stay-at-home dad. That sends him into a deep, dark depression. He's going to therapy. He's super anxious. He's like, I'm nothing. Who am I without Blink-182? I have nothing. His wife is there being like, no, you have something. He's like, you don't know what to tell me right now. Nobody knows how to get through to me.
And then Tom puts out an album with a band he creates called Angels and Airwaves. Tom has since admitted he was doing pills and spinning out at the time, but he really felt in his soul that Angels and Airwaves was destined to change the world.
He's like, I thought based on the way he was talking that it sounded like he lost his mind. And then he kind of like makes fun of how it has such a mediocre splash.
He has lost his mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then Mark and Travis work together and they bring a couple other guys on to do Plus 44. And he says because Angels and Airwaves was such a flop, people weren't interested in Plus 44 because they were like, well, if the first Blink offshoot sucked, why would the second Blink offshoot be good?
The thing is, look at Travis. It turns out talent finds itself. Anyway, so they're doing these shows and he's like, a year ago I was selling out Madison Square Garden and now I'm doing like this weird promo lunch in Miami. How did this happen? And they end up opening for Fall Out Boy, who 2 years prior had been opening out for him. And he's like, how the mighty have fallen. I suddenly sympathize with Green Day. But he's like, it was better than nothing. So he takes it. Ultimately, Travis, this is when he has like such a bad fracture in his wrist that he has to start playing with one arm. And then that arm gets a fracture too. And Travis is kind of like, is it okay if I go home? Because they say I could like break my hands off completely. And he's like, yeah. You could go home.
And then that's when I think Travis starts working way more with like hip hop musicians.
So then he's like, life was so hard, but my family did everything they could to distract me with vacations. We went on a ton of vacations. On one of these vacations, he learns to scuba.
He gets really into scuba diving.
And then on one of the scuba diving trips, he goes with this woman who had no friends and she died. So that sucks. So then their good friend Jerry, who had produced all of their best albums, dies as well. He has an aneurysm.
Jerry's death only worsened my OCD and panic attacks. I could barely get out of bed, and when I did, I was a shell of myself, just a neurotic zombie aimlessly shuffling around. Intrusive thoughts lasted days. So he does have, I think, pretty severe mental health issues. He believes death is waiting around every corner. He is driving with his wife and they see a plane crash. Then they see like a deer in the road that's dead. And then Travis gets into his plane crash. These few weeks were all the validation my neuroses needed. Even the most level-headed person would be hard-pressed to disagree that the world was conspiring to have us killed.
So Travis's horrible accident, if you don't know, if you haven't listened to the Travis episode, is he was in a plane crash where DJ AM died. Somebody else died.
DJ AM survived but died later on pills because he and Travis survived.
Oh, whoops. Okay, sorry.
So his assistant and bodyguard died and the pilot.
Travis got burned all over his body. All of his skin is like 85% of his skin has been regrafted on at this point. He had to get all of his tattoos redone. And he had to like learn to drum all over. I mean, it was like horrible. And
he had like horrible like nerve and muscle damage.
And I remember he had been like kind of addicted to pills at that point. So there was like no reprieve from the pain because his tolerance for painkillers was so high that they couldn't give him any more than what it took. Like it didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And if there's ever been a reason not to get addicted to painkillers, it's that should you get into an accident, there'll be nothing they can do for you.
Yeah. And while he was in the hospital, his wife went on his computer and found him cheating.
A lot of whammies.
Tough week for Travis Barker.
Anyway, it did bring the band back together, so to speak. Tom calls Mark. He's like, hey, it's me, Tom. I stepped into my backyard to take the call. I hadn't spoken to Tom in 4 years since the day we argued in the parking lot of Mate Studios during the tsunami relief. The last memory I had of him was watching him walk away. We caught up for a few minutes, mostly about Travis. We didn't talk about the band or the bad times. Then there was a pause. So Tom finally said, what have you learned over the last 4 years?
He never tells us what he learned.
In the wake of this, they're going to hang out with Travis. They decide, let's get the band back together. Like they suddenly have a new understanding and appreciation for life. And they say, let's make a big announcement that Blink-182 is back together at the VMAs. Right?
And there's some award shows. They just like go up.
Grammys.
They present an award and say Blink is back.
But unfortunately, it's really bad traffic, it turns out. It turns out LA is kind of a clusterfuck during the Grammys. So everybody's running late. Travis is running so late that they think they might have to go on stage without him, but they're not sure because they don't want to. He has his arm in a sling from a recent surgery. And he's like, they kind of just hobble out there and they're like, we're back. And he's like, it did not hit. People did not care. He said that we look like a bunch of kids who forgot their lines at a school play.
Yeah, he also mentions that this was the Grammys where Rihanna canceled her performance because she had just gotten assaulted by Chris Brown. And so there were a lot of moving pieces.
Logistically a nightmare, domestic abuse.
A lot going on that you can't control. People were confused. We didn't look like us. But then they do get back in the studio to make a new album. And because their producer had died, they were like, let's just produce it ourselves, which
they need an adult in the room. They are not people who can come together and put out good work. They need to be produced.
Yeah. So then they produced this album. It's like not that good.
It's called Neighbors.
They tour and it is just shitty. Like the tour is long and weird because they have to wait for Travis to take a bus or a car to every venue because he won't fly anymore. And then Tom is just being like painful and annoying. I didn't typically drink on the road, but this tour pushed me to start. The crew and I began a nightly ritual we called the Deer Hunters Society, which is just doing Jägermeister shots. The tour broke people. Crew members who'd been with us for years came home swearing they would never tour again. It was a bad time to work with Blink.
They still hadn't put out the album Neighbors, by the way. They had been working on it and they like toured on it and they hadn't finished the album itself because they were like, we just cannot get it to where it needs to be. Whenever people would call and ask about it, they'd change their minds. Blink was so difficult to work with that our friend who worked at the label quit.
Their contract was up and then they were like, we aren't staying here.
Yeah, and so they have to find a new label. And everybody's like, well, you're a legacy band. And they're so offended by that. They also, the problem is Tom DeLonge, I guess, is kind of insane now. And every time he takes a meeting, he's like, well, I want to know about cartoons. I want to know about
action figures,
art installations, coffee table books.
Eventually, we partnered with BMG, who gave us the best of all worlds, a label system and an infrastructure while allowing us to own our masters. The commodification of Blink-182 made Travis and me suspicious of Tom's motivations for rejoining Blink. So they all have businesses on the side now, except Mark, I guess. I think that he really was just like, the band is my band.
Yeah.
And he loves the band. And, you know, we know Travis had famous Stars and Straps, his fashion line. He had a reality show with Shanna Moakler. He was just like doing a lot of other stuff. And then I guess Tom had started this business that was, I think, like a precursor to Spotify,
Well, Patreon.
Yeah.
And it was actually not a bad idea. He had noticed that Napster and streaming had killed the music industry. So what he proposed was give the music away for free and then have people pay to have different tiers of fan club access to the band, which is Patreon.
Yes.
Join our Patreon, patreon.com/Celebrity Memoir Book Club, where you will get bonus episodes every week and a monthly advice column, plus % off on merch. I will say, Mark is like, credit where credit's due. It was ahead of its time. That is where the industry ended up going. But he kept trying to pitch Blink-182 for this. And then every time he had an idea, he was like, yeah, and we could do it on Mod Life, which was the name of his platform. And the problem was, the catch-22 was, Blink-182 didn't want to feel like he was only joining the band to like promote this business, but he couldn't promote the business if his band wasn't on it. Like, it was a really bad look for him to be trying to get other bands to join and then being like, oh, is Blink on it? And he's like, well, no, we would never do it. It's beneath us.
And then they finally did do it. So then Tom goes, I have a really good idea. Let's do like a fun Christmas EP. And they were like, cool, we love a Christmas EP. And he's like, and we can put it on Mod Life. And they were like, oh, fuck, this was a Mod Life thing. Didn't realize.
They end up saying, yes, unfortunately, Mod Life, of course, is just a fledgling business and does not at all have the capability of pushing out all of the album sales that were like pre-sold. He just couldn't handle the logistics.
Couldn't handle the fandom of Blink-182.
And then, of course, they got a bunch of complaints and now the fans are pissed. And now they're saying, see, like you kept pushing Mod Life on us and it wasn't good enough. And he goes, see, you just wanted Mod Life to fail so that you could move on.
And they were like, both true. Anyway, so now he's living in London. It's pretty idyllic, except for the fact that the band is falling apart again. He says that they were just kind of coasting for a minute where, you know, he was living in London. They were all still pretty separate. They were all kind of pissed at each other. And no one was like putting the energy behind what needed to happen. And Tom was difficult to work with. He would want to make an album and then all of a sudden be like, no, I don't want to make an album. I just want to tour. And they'd be like, okay, let's get a tour together. And then he'd be like, no, never mind. I don't want to tour. I want to record. And it just became this like back and forth where they were all kind of dependent on what Tom was in the mood to do, which doesn't work.
Finally, New Year's Eve, he gets a call from his manager being like, Tom does not want to be in the band and he'll never speak to you again. And Mark's like, yeah, I've been there.
And then this time Mark was like, wait, why does Tom have to be in the band? He's been making life hell. Like,
Travis is like, dude, just keep fucking making music, just you and me.
Yeah. And they were like, why does you and me have to be a different band? Why can't we just get a new guitarist? And so they get the guy from Alkaline Trio, Matt.
And they write new music and they put it out. And of course, he's so insecure that like without Tom, he's nothing. Without the balance of Tom, he can't do it. But they put out an album.
And he says it was hard. Like, it's hard to have a new person there and be like, okay, we want to be like Blink-182, but not too much like Blink-182. We want to do something interesting. And like, we want you to bring your flavor to it, but you can't change the flavor too much.
He also is like, it's a completely different world than I knew it when I started. He's like, there is no TRL anymore. All the traditional methods of recording don't even exist anymore. He's like, it is just hard to make an album when you've grown up with a different system.
But people liked the album. They ended up getting a Grammy nomination, and it was their first nomination for Best Rock Album.
It's called California. They toured the hell out of it. They had a great summer. He's like, remember, it was the summer of Pokemon Go.
I do remember that summer.
Does that have anything to do with his album?
No, but I think it helps you lock in where we're at timeline-wise.
Got it.
Just like 9/11.
Travis still talks about Tom the way a kid talks about his dad who went out for smokes 5 years ago. He kept being like, well, when Tom comes back, and Mark was like, don't you see, kid, Tom's never coming back.
I will say Travis and Mark, I like cannot fathom. There's pictures of Travis in this book with Mark, but I'm like, what do you mean you guys have met?
It's just, to me, they're like Priyanka and Nick Jonas. I'm like, what do you mean you exist on the same plane?
Yeah.
How could you have met? They're trying everything they can to promote, but again, they just don't understand social media. They're not getting how it works these days. They're doing Vogue and Monday Night Football and being like, why won't this sell our punk rock album? Monday Night Football? Well, I'll tell you. They think you're gay.
They're feeling good about how that album went and how everything is going. And then, dun, 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 COVID. My fears of germs had come true. The 1 in a million thought process that fuels my anxiety had been validated.
And so then he's home hanging out, just hanging out with his family when he feels a lump on his shoulder. And he asks his wife about it because all wives know. And she goes, well, why don't you ask a doctor? And then sure enough, he has lymphoma.
It turns out he has stage 4A.
Which meant that the tumors had spread to other parts of my body, the lymph node on my shoulder and another in my neck and more in my abdomen and intestines.
I wasn't Mark from Blink-182 anymore. I was a patient, a number, a case.
So he has to do some pretty serious chemotherapy. And he's scared.
It's called R-CHOP.
But the good news is after 4 sessions, he has no more cancer. They give him a 5th one. It seems like it's gone. And he has since gone into remission.
It seems like he's doing good.
Yes, it sounds like, the book came out yesterday. And he hasn't had to write an addendum. So far, so healthy. In the meantime, he had meant to keep his cancer a secret, but under the grogginess of all the drugs he was on, getting chemo, he accidentally posted to his Instagram story like that he was getting chemo that moment. Obviously, it blew up, and he had this fear that if people knew, like they'd be preying on his downfall, that so many people hated Blink-182 and hated him, that everyone would just be happy to hear he could die. And in fact, the opposite happened. People he hadn't heard from in years were reaching out. He was connecting to other people that he had fallen out of touch with who were also going through chemo at the same time. And he found this incredible support system, including Tom, who ended up calling him every single day to check on him.
Yeah, he and Tom had like lightly reconnected. And then he got diagnosed and he texted Tom being like, FYI, I have cancer. And Tom started calling him every single day, was always checking in on him, was always there for him. And it helped mend their relationship.
He left with just like a new appreciation for life. Not long after I was announced cancer-free, a paparazzo approached me as I was leaving dinner with Sky and some friends. Any lessons you want to impart on the rest of us? He asked. How do you answer something like that? Enjoy every day, I told him. It was the first thing that came to mind, and it's true. Enjoy every fucking day.
He gets like a GQ Man of the Year award. People are very proud of him for his bravery, and he doesn't like being called brave. He's like, I don't know.
What was my other option?
That was, I think, a really interesting exchange between him and his wife, where after his first treatment, he was like, I just don't like this. I don't want to do this anymore. And she goes, okay, so you're going to kill yourself?
And he's like, it sounds flippant, but it was helpful to recontextualize to me that that was like my only option.
And I do think the way he writes about cancer in this is interesting and like helpful almost, where he is like, I don't know, every second of it fucking sucked. It just like is what you have to do, and other people were having a worse time than me, and like you just have to get through it. Like there's no other choice really.
The three of us met for breakfast at the Beverly Hills Hotel and had our first conversation about Blink in years. We talked about what we needed for the band to come back together, the three of us, once and for all. No more bullshit, no more fucking around. This band and this life are a blessing. Let's do cool shit and make music we love. Blink-182 forever and always. They go to the Valley where Travis has a spot, and he has like this giant compound where you can make music, and things were different. It felt good. So they have to fire obviously the Tom DeLonge replacement. And he's kind of like, dude, love the band. Wish you nothing but luck. Knew this day was going to come.
And then Frank Ocean drops out of Coachella. So on a Thursday, they're like, hey, Sunday, could you headline Coachella? And they end up pulling it together to play the biggest crowd they've ever played. It was like 150,000 people. My best friends followed me on stage. A thought crosses my mind. Maybe I died in the cancer center and this is heaven. I step out into the light and the noise.
That's a nice little last line. What a way to end it, huh?
I don't want to call it a simple dream because he was the bassist in one of the biggest bands in the world. But he did like want one specific thing, and that's it.
And he wanted one woman to be his wife. I mean, they must have been, 25 when they met?
He wouldn't have been happy if they were just playing the main stage at Soma. But he did want one very specific thing, and that very specific thing is happening. And he loves that.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because as far as rock stars go, I mean, he really gives Dave Grohl a run for his boring ass money. You know what I mean? He really is like, what if a dad you knew got to take his garage band to the top?
Wearing a fucking tie on the cover of this book with a faux hawk.
He's a real type, and God bless, it made for a quick and easy book. I mean, all that OCD and not a lot of complicated thoughts. I'll tell you that.
I wonder about the OCD and the anxiety and he like mentions being in therapy, and I do wonder where that's going.
I would like to hear Tom's side of things. I'm
so curious to finish out the trifecta.
I feel like in Tom's side of things, I would really have a lot of compassion for Mark or understand why it was so, like, and I get it's annoying to have your entire livelihood be like hinged on a crazy person. That being said, it's weird to not be like
compassionate about that.
Yeah. It's weird to have such a scarcity mindset when all you've ever known is abundance.
Yeah, and I mean, we've obviously already heard Travis's POV, but I do find it so fascinating.
See, like Travis is such a different POV, I feel, because he doesn't have that fear. It's like, great, if it's good here, it'll be good here, and if it's not good here, I'll go somewhere else and get it there.
That's what I was going to say, is it's so interesting how like removed from the drama of the band he seems. Because he was also causing problems. Like he was also a pill addict who was like showing up late before he was in a plane crash. Like he was also randomly the pop punk heartthrob. But Mark is so zeroed in on his like codependent friendship with Tom that the fact that like Travis is causing chaos as well is just completely irrelevant. That is interesting.
I feel like Mark and Tom are like identical twins from this dysfunctional family. And then Travis is like their cool stepbrother.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, he was in the house, but it was different.
And you're like, what do you mean the person in your house is a Kardashian now?
Yeah. Anyway, you guys, I mean, would you like to have any drinks with Mark Hoppus? Any more martinis?
If he was like there, I would be like, oh my God, how fun that I'm at this bar with Mark Hoppus.
But he's not your first choice.
No.
Not even my first choice of all three.
I wouldn't like leave.
It's so funny because he's like, now Blink-182, like we all have our things. Like Travis is the one who married a Kardashian. Tom's the one who thinks he was abducted by aliens. I'm the one with cancer. And I was like, okay. Oh, okay.
How fertile would you call this soil?
3 out of 5.
I believe it's very much on a scale of like how much you loved Blink-182.
I guess I do. I'm like, well, I guess that's what happened in Blink-182. And I think that's as deep as it's going to get. But
Why
am
didn't
just
you
like,
just call Tom up and say, where are you?
And I'm so sorry. All right, you guys. And who is the girl at the rock show of our heart?
Oh my God. She said, thank you for your 5-star reviews. And I told her, no, thank you. Support for Celebrity Memoir Book Club comes from the all-new Nissan Murano. Sometimes you gotta sing. Sometimes you gotta sit in silence. Sometimes you gotta just go for a drive.
Whatever you gotta do today, the driver's seat of the all-new Nissan Murano is the place to do it. With an elevated modern interior and a bold new exterior look, you can let down all your walls and be whoever you gotta be, all while looking stylish and put together. Isn't that the dream?
The all-new Nissan Murano, your refuge to do exactly what you gotta do.